Welcome, Agent Blazers, to our session today. We are going to talk about building headless agents with Agentforce API. Now, as always, please be warned that we will be making some forward-looking statements in our presentation today, and we recommend that you make any purchasing decisions based on generally available products only. And with that, I want to start by saying thank you, especially since you can feel the smell from the lunch venue next door. So I appreciate you taking time to join us here today. Hopefully you get a bite. But jokes apart, we really appreciate your time, you joining us here today, and we do hope that you find the contents of our presentation today a good use of your time. Quick introduction, my name is Shipra Gupta. I'm Senior Director of Product Management on Agentforce team, and I am joined by Philip.
Hello everyone, I'm Philip Ozil. I'm a developer advocate here at Salesforce. Excited to get you through the content.
All right, so our agenda for today is as follows. We'll talk about the agentic era that we are living in, believe it or not. We'll talk about headless agents. We'll introduce the Agentforce API to you, and then we'll show you some code, some configurations, so that when you leave our session today, you are equipped to start building your own headless agents. And then finally, we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. So I'm sure you must have heard by now that Salesforce is ushering in the age of digital labor powered by Gen AI agents. But what are Gen AI agents? Truth be told, there is rampant confusion about the term agent right now. So I want to start by unpacking what agents are for you. There are essentially three constructs that are used in somewhat intertwined and overlapping manner: chatbots, copilots, and agents. Now, I will say that while there is no quantitative criteria to help you distinguish between them, the scale that you can use is the increasing levels of autonomy and sophistication to distinguish between them. Now, chatbots have been around for quite some time, and they have been used with mixed success in the customer service domain. Yes, they can help with the automation of simple tasks, but they often break down and hence considered rigid. Then with the Gen AI revolution that started in early 2023, we saw a rise of copilots. And these copilots were much better than chatbots because they could understand natural language better than chatbots. So while they overcame the natural language communication barrier, they were still somewhat limited in the kind of tasks, the complexity and the sophistication of tasks they could undertake. Now, over the last year or so, with the meteoric rise in the advancements of large language models, we have seen the rise of agents. These agents can understand human language just as you would be talking to another human being. But they're also much more smarter and much more intelligent. So let me explain this with an example. Now, how many of you here are developers? Some developers here, okay. I am sure you never considered using a chatbot to help you with your development task, right? All right, but with the advent of copilots like GitHub Copilot, Replit Ghostwriter, Cursor, etc., we have seen some useful copilots that you may have considered using or you may already been using, because these copilots can provide you smart auto-suggest, auto-complete options for your code. They can help you with the debugging of your code. They can provide you useful insights in multiple languages, and so on and so forth. But agents take it several notches higher. Agents are like an independent software developer in that you can give a task to this agent in natural language, and it can produce a fully functioning code for you, right? Now, I will say that coding is a very complex and dynamic activity, so we are yet to see a much more wider adoption of agentic coders or coding agents. But at Salesforce, we are seeing a tremendous uptake and impact to productivity and efficiency with the adoption of agents in customer service and sales domain. Let me share an interesting fact with you. So do you know that there are close to 100 million knowledge workers in United States? All right, the interesting part is, according to the US Bureau of Labor Productivity, the growth rate in the productivity of these knowledge workers has stayed stagnant over the last few years. Separately, in an independent study carried out by Salesforce, we found that Agentforce helped increase the productivity of employees by up to 43%. So that's where you can see that there is a massive opportunity to advance that productivity and bring about that digital transformation. So now that I have introduced this, I want to introduce, now that you have some idea of what agents are, and probably you already did, but having level set that, I want to introduce one more term to you, and that is headless agents. You guys, anybody in the audience who's heard about headless agents, somewhat familiar with it? Okay, great. All right. So headless agents are the same intelligent and autonomous agents that we just talked about, but the key difference is that headless agents are not tied to a traditional conversational interface that we associate with chatbots or co-pilots, or even agents for that matter. So they are a category of their own. And because they are not tied to a conversational interface, you can deploy them in a wide variety of workflows, applications, and processes to bring about automation of routine tasks, enhanced personalization, and scale operations. Let me give you some examples of headless agents across sales, service, marketing, and e-commerce. So imagine in sales, you can deploy a churn prevention agent. This agent can monitor any early signs of potential customer churn, and based on that, trigger a retention workflow for your customers. In service, imagine you could deploy a proactive outreach agent that can monitor the status of your cases, and when that status changes, it autonomously reaches out to inform your customer. In marketing, imagine you could deploy a sentiment analysis agent that can monitor your customers' activity on their email, chat, social media, etc., and based on that, analyze their sentiment and provide you with useful insights about how they're feeling and how you should take your relationship further with them. And then in e-commerce, imagine you could have a personalized product recommendation agent that can look at the past shopping behavior of your agent, and it can analyze the browsing patterns in real time to offer personalized product recommendations. So I have listed a number of use cases in each one of these categories. Feel free to take a picture. But as you can see that the possibilities are endless when it comes to headless agents. So when we talk about agents, we are living in this agentic era. There are teams, lines of businesses, departments that are looking to adopt and tap into Gen AI agents. That's fantastic. But with that opportunity also comes the challenge of agent proliferation. So basically what we need is, there is a need for agent-to-agent communication, because while everybody is looking to build these agents, you can automate complex workflows, that's fantastic, but in order for those workflows to work seamlessly, those agents need to communicate with each other. So that's where we are seeing three patterns essentially. The first pattern is where you have an Agentforce agent that needs to communicate with a third-party agent. You can support this by building custom actions in Agentforce, and those custom actions can wrap around the APIs of those third-party agents. The second and the third pattern are as follows. The second pattern is where you need one Agentforce agent to speak to another Agentforce agent. And the third pattern is where you want a third-party agent to communicate with your Agentforce agent. And now both of these patterns can be supported by virtue of our Agentforce API that we will talk about more in just a moment. So let me also provide you an example here. Imagine that there is a loan application system. Now, I don't know about you, but I have applied for loan, and it is a very painful and complicated process. So if this were to be automated through a multi-agent system, it would typically contain one agent that is your orchestrator agent, whose job is to interact with the customer, get their loan application details, follow up with them, provide status updates, etc. And then second thing it would do is it would orchestrate other specialized agents in the ecosystem. It will invoke those specialized agents to fulfill various tasks and activities. And those specialized agents in this case could be your document verification agent, your credit score agent, your risk analysis agent, and finally your loan decision agent, right? So as you can see that by deploying a multi-agent system, you can automate a very complex workflow, very complex process. But not only that, you can also create a seamless user experience, because now your user is interacting with this one agent who's doing all of this under the hood. Your user is not having to jump through the hoops, or they don't have to indulge in what I call as agent hopping. They don't have to go from one agent to another or one employee to another. So how is all of this, these two use cases that I just talked about headless agents, how does it all become possible? Well, introducing the Agent API. The Agentforce APIs are now generally available. These are simple, lightweight REST APIs that you can deploy on any interface, on any surface, any application, any workflow to bring about the intelligent business automation. By using these APIs, you can build both proactive and reactive agents and also facilitate and support agent-to-agent communication. So with that, why don't I turn it over to Philip to show us some more nitty-gritty details of the APIs, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Shipra. All right, let's go and dive deep into developer content like hard. So if you've been playing a bit with agents, you may have noticed that we already had an API to do some level of agent integrations before. This is called the Messaging for In-App and Web API, or MEOW in short. This exists for a number of releases already, but the main focus of this API is not so much to work with agents. It's first designed to connect with humans, have conversations with customers on a variety of platforms. For example, it could be Experience Cloud, it could be your third-party site, mobile devices, things like that. So it's very powerful, but also a bit complex to set up. There are a number of things you can do which require extra configuration. You have to get flows, you have to manage the activity, the availability of your agents, being human agents or service agents that help your customers. And you can also have the ability to start a conversation with an agent, then update it to an actual human person to help you with your inquiries. Now, the MEOW API is great, but it's also way more powerful than just a prompting API, because it supports a number of formats which our agents, or service agents in general, do not support yet. You can go with text, forms, file exchange, all of these things which are not yet supported by agents. Agents only support text prompt at the moment. So to compensate for all of this, we've put in place the new API, the new Agent API, which takes care of some of the hurdles of using the MEOW API. First of all, the Agent API is truly headless. It's not designed necessarily to be used within a user interface. You don't have a chat interface to use it. You can use it with a pure server-to-server integration if you need to. The Agent API also is very simple to set up. To the difference of the MEOW API, you don't need to create flows. You don't need to do a lot of configuration. It's really as simple as we'll see a two-step process. I don't want to spoil you. You'll be seeing more details later. And finally, the purpose of the API is very limited and very straight to the point. It's executing prompts, text, and also providing feedback on the responses that you're getting back from the agent. So it's a very small API, but it's also very focused, and that's what I like about it. So let's see how you set up this API. Very simple. I mentioned it's a two-step process. The only requirement for using the Agent API is that you have to configure a service agent. It's not available on the in-house or internal agents. And then you have two steps. The first step is that you need to create a connected app. Nothing crazy. I mean, if you've already done some integrations with other systems, you probably already built connected apps. The specific feature that you need to toggle in this specific connected app is that you'll need certain scopes that are required for the agent API. This is more documented, obviously, in our official documentation, but you'll need in particular the chatbot API, and you'll need the SF API as well. Then, once you've created your connected app, you'll need to tie the connected app to your agent configuration. And you can see in the lower screenshot number 2 here, we have the configuration of our service agent, and we have added in the connections section a new connection to our API, which is our connected app. This is how you authenticate with your agent. So that's the principle of connecting and preparing the API. Now, how do you really work with the API now that you have set it up? It's going to be very simple. I mentioned it's a simple API to use. There's not a lot of requests. You have on one side your client, and on the other side the Agentforce backend. The first thing you need to do, like any other API, you need to authenticate first, and you'll be using the credentials from your connected app to do this. Once you've set up authentication, you start the context, and you actually start a conversation, pretty much like if you were opening a chat. Every exchange you'll have with an agent will be in the context of a conversation. You start the conversation, you do a number of prompts, and then you close the conversation. Now, you can do a single prompt or you can do multiple prompts. If you run more than one prompt within the conversation, the agent remembers of the context of the conversation. So you can ask to refine previous results. It knows about the history of the conversation. And once you're done, you can close the conversation, and optionally, you can also provide feedback whenever you want to one of the responses that you got from your prompt. Now, I want to focus on the key part of the API, executing prompts. There are several ways to do this. In fact, there are 2 ways to do it. You can either go for a synchronous mode or an asynchronous approach. And both have their pros and cons, and I'm going to walk you over the advantages of each. Let's start first with the synchronous mode. The synchronous mode is very simple. It's a long-lived HTTP connection that you start with your prompt and you receive a response back. Now, the problem is with this kind of approach is that it can take a lot of time to get a response back. Typically, you're talking about tens of seconds by the time you get your prompt and you get your result back. And if you want to use this in the context of a user interface, that's not going to play very well because you're going to be freezing your user interface while you wait for a response. So it's definitely not recommended to use in a UI context. However, for server-to-server interaction, it's great because you just have a very simple thing to implement, just a simple HTTP request, which any developer could do, and then you get your response back. Now let me walk you over the second mode, which is, I think, very interesting, but also maybe a bit more complicated setup. In the asynchronous mode, we work with something called SSE, or server-sent events. For those of you who are not familiar with server-sent events, it's a bidirectional communication protocol. You start with a single HTTP request, and then you get the response in chunks in event-driven format. So you start with a typical REST format with your prompt, and then you'll get bits of your response in several messages on the server-sent stream. The disadvantage of this approach, however, is you have to put together a slightly more complex integration because you're dealing with an event-driven interaction. So you're getting your response in chunks, so you have to reassemble the response in order to process it. But it gives you the advantage of having a dynamic user interface. You can have your dynamic loading messages. You can have also chunking that lets you build a response as you receive the different bits of the response. It's way more dynamic. It's more user-friendly, really. And we'll see that as we go through an example with another demo later on. So I mentioned streaming and chunking, and these are 2 different concepts. This diagram here illustrates what it looks like to receive a response in a stream format. You have the blue part, which is your actual request, HTTP request, and then you don't get the response immediately. The requests get transformed into a server-sent stream, and then you'll get different messages. You'll get a number of process indicator messages giving you the loading status, and then you'll start receiving text chunks, which will be bits of your response. So if you have already interacted with agents before, or even bots, you generally see that the response doesn't come into a single block of text. You generally have a first few sentences, then extra bits, extra words, extra words, extra words. And this is precisely what chunking does. It breaks down the user response into multiple chunks because the agent, the LLM behind the scenes, is adding more text and more context as it goes. So you can use those text chunks, sorry, it's hard to say, to pre-populate your user interface with the bits of the response as it goes through. And at the end, you'll get an inform message, which contains the full message. So if you don't want to process chunks, you can directly take the inform message, which contains the full response. Once the agent is done with your prompt, it will respond with the last event, which is an end of turn event, which will mark the fact that it's no longer processing your request. So that is just sending one prompt. Obviously, you can do this with multiple prompts. You can iterate, but that's the anatomy of a prompt in a stream format. So I talked a lot. There are a number of slides, but you really probably want to see this in action. So we're going to jump over the first demo of the day, and I'm going to show you how you can get started with the API using Postman. So Postman is an API client that we use. It's actually an API platform, I should say, that does a lot of things, and we use it in particular here as an API client, and I'm going to show you how you can get started with the API. What you're looking at right now is the Salesforce Developers workspace. It's an environment in which we have provided collections for tens of different Salesforce products. And among those, there's a new player in town. There is the Agent API here, which is the newest collection or set of resources for working with the Agent API. So how do you work with it? You go on this Salesforce Developers workspace. You'll create a fork of it. I have already created a fork in my own environment. I have actually prepared it, so I have already prepared my configuration. So you'll work with variables to prepare the configuration. All of this obviously is documented. I won't go through documentation for the sake of time. But once you're ready, you authenticate with your connected app. So you have to provide obviously the credentials of your connected app. And then you'll be able to interact with it. Aha, interesting. Normally it takes a breeze to get to the access token. Let me try again. Oh, I know what I did. No, let's see, try again. There we go, okay, much better. So I got the successful authentication response. I got a user access token that I'm going to use. And then I can start playing with the API. Remember the diagram I showed earlier? Every time you want to work with the agent, you have to start a conversation. That's the first part. So to do this, I already have a request template that is pre-populated for me. You can set up variables, you can set up your time zone, and a few other things. Right now I've configured it to use streaming, and we'll see chunks of text coming back when we start doing prompts. So I'm opening the conversation. I'm getting back a response, and the important part of the response is this session ID that I have here, and this will tie all of my next requests to the conversation. Behind the scenes, there's a little script here that saves me the pain of copying this over, and I can already start working with the next requests. I'm not going to show you the synchronous prompt because it's pretty easy to use. I'm just going to go through the streaming example, which I think is more interesting. I've already pre-populated my request with a prompt that works with our agent. We're going to see another demo in a couple minutes that talks to you how you can work with an online learning course, and we'll see how the agent can give you recommendations for course. So here my prompt is, give me AI courses that last for 2 hours, and I'm going to send it. So I first send an HTTP request, and the HTTP request is getting upgraded to a server sent event. And you can see here already I have some progress indicators that are showing me custom loading messages for my actions. Now, if we wait a bit more, we're going to see text chunks from the response that are going to come up. Here we're already 20 seconds in, and in a couple seconds we should see the extra messages come in. Let's see, there we go, one more progress indicator, and then text chunks. So text chunks are really the bits of the request, and after that there's an inform which contains the whole request, and you can actually, I can show you, this is the message that is sent back. Here are some AI courses with a list. We'll see that more later on, but that's really the response, sorry. And then the end of turn that marks the end of the conversation. And that's it, it's as simple as this. Obviously now I can continue with the conversation. I can send other prompts if I want to. It will remember the context of the previous prompts. And once I'm done, I can just end the session and close it. That's it. So that's, in a nutshell, the Agent API, but I think it will make even more sense when we go into a demo with a business use case. So let me just, go back a few more slides, and then we can jump into this. So for today's demo, I just wanted to show you the architecture of what we put together. We have 3 components in the next demo we're going to show you. You have the Agentforce backend. You have a node application, which is serving our custom application that offers online courses. And then you have a customer of the application that is using a browser to interact with all of this. And for the demo, we have built an Agentforce API client on Node.js that will interact with the Agent API that is hosted on Salesforce, first sending REST requests and then server-sent events to get response back. And on the browser side, you'll be working with WebSockets and REST requests to see the app build up and respond. All right, now let's jump in it.
So should we show a headless agent? All right. So to show you a headless agent in action, what we have done here is we have taken this an education portal as an example, and we have built a headless agent which is a smart course recommender. And this headless agent springs into action when the user navigates to this education portal. And the purpose of this smart course recommender headless agent is to recommend personalized courses to this user. So I'll show you behind the scene how we have configured this Agentforce agent. But at a very high level, the way it works is it will look at the user's profile, it will get their GitHub profile information, it'll get their LinkedIn profile information, it will go to the internet to look at the latest course trends in that space that the user is interested in, and then it'll come back with course recommendations. Now that's just one example. You can obviously make this course recommender agent more smart. If you wanted to, you can add your ranking algorithms and how you recommend the courses and whatnot, more data processing steps, etc. But the key thing that I want you to focus here is that there is no conversational interface here. There is no traditional chat interface here. This is not a conversational experience at all. What we have done here is we have embedded that headless agent in this web page itself using that Node.js application that Philip coded. And by virtue of this, now this web page is more intelligent, and you can create a much more personalized experience, a much more compelling experience for your users here. So this is to showcase the power of the headless agents, which is that by deploying those agents in any interface, any surface, any application, any workflow, you can bring so much business intelligence to your applications. So this is the experience here. So we, these are just some course recommendations that just pop in. The way we invoke this is by the click of a button here, but this could very well have been a page navigation event or any other kind of events that you can tap into to trigger your headless agent, okay? So now let's show you what is going on in the Agentforce world here. So this is our course recommender agent, and this agent has two topics that we have configured. One is the course booking topic, and the other one is the course recommendation topic. So why don't we prompt in the builder, let's just ask a prompt to this agent so that we can see how it is working. So this is our topic. The purpose of this topic is to recommend courses based on users' interest. And as you can see, the actions that I just spoke about, which is that it looks at users' profile, it looks at their GitHub profile, LinkedIn profile, it can look at the latest course trends, and it can compile all of that information to come up with the recommendations. But the key thing here is that once you have built this agent here, you can deploy it in multiple ways. You can also deploy it in a conversational experience. But what we showcased you was the headless experience, because I think that is an additional way in which you can bring that business intelligence automation. And so when we ask this agent the same thing here as we tested here in the builder, you can see the reasoning or the way the reasoning engine is working under the hood, where it is invoking those actions one by one, and it's finally coming up with those course recommendations for you. All right? So let me show you, why don't we go to the connections tab of this agent and show how we set this up. So this is you configuring an Agentforce agent. It is a run-of-the-mill Agentforce agent, just as you would any other agent, right? The only thing that you have to do here is, if you want to expose it programmatically via an API, is to add this connected app here for the API. And that is the connected app that you will create using the configuration that Philip just showcased. All right, so this is as simple and as straightforward as that. So with that, let's go back to, next, I can take it, thank you. All right, so APIs is one way through which you can programmatically invoke Agentforce in any interface, but we are providing more ways to help you build these headless agents. So we are making available custom agent invocable actions that you can embed in your flow or your Apex to invoke these headless agents. This feature is also generally available at present. And then we are working on also providing standard invocable actions. This is currently in pilot, and we are looking to ship this as well very, very soon for general availability. So these are just additional ways. Again, if you want to add those headless agents to your flows and apexes, you can just directly use one of these kind of actions to do that. All right, so with that, we are coming towards the end of our session today. Our call to action is that hopefully you learned enough about the APIs and the value of the headless agents. So our documentation is live now on our developer portal. I encourage you to get your hands on it and start building headless agents. And this QR code is very important. So Philip has taken the effort to compile a list of all resources for you. So if you take this QR code, you can get access to our documentation. You can get to the Postman collection that Philip showcased. And you can also get the code base for the demo that we showcased today for that headless agent. So please do feel free to take pictures.
Absolutely. You'll get the Node API client I wrote, so it's a reusable bit of code.
All right, and with that, a big thank you to you. Please stay behind if you have any questions for us. And then one last thing, please take a minute or two to provide us feedback. This is extremely helpful and critical for us. This is how we learn about your needs and your interests. And you can obviously win a Starbucks gift card for coffee if you do so. But more importantly, please do help us learn about your needs. So please do provide feedback to us. And so we'll get to the side here, me and Philip, if you guys have any questions for us.
If we have time, we can then take them on stage.
Oh, we have some time.
If you have questions, please go to the front and talk to the mic because the session is being recorded. So
we have more time.
We want to make sure we capture questions.
Hello, my name is Walter. So I have a question. In order to, I'm friends from this is really cool. In order to implement one of those headless agents, do we need to have data cloud enabled on the org? Or not? No.
Well, okay. So you need data cloud for Agentforce to work, right? And APIs are essentially a handle to your Agentforce. So yes, you will need data cloud for the functioning of your Agentforce.
Okay, got it. And another question also, just to recall properly. So what you were showing here is that we can build just one agent the regular way, conversational, do all of this stuff, but we can also expand it and make it API. So I only build one agent, and I can then expand it to some other place.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today.
A great presentation. When you were showing the reasoning that would suggest a course, and we were collecting the data from the different places, and then that method that actually gets the course recommendations, is that asking a model, okay, based on this context, is all the things before that just preparing basically the prompt? Is that what's happening there in that example?
It's a mix of data collection and then like a summarization of the trends. And with all the parameters, it's taking a prompt with using prompt builder. Yes.
Okay.
That was an awesome presentation, guys. Question about the end session library function. So what if I don't call that throughout the course of my agent session? Is there some sort of timeout that happens automatically?
Yes, the timeouts are 1 day, 24 hours currently for Agentforce sessions.
Got it. But the recommendation is still like, if your session is done, call that method programmatically?
Yeah, I would say that is generally a good development practice, right? Like why keep resources unnecessarily running? Do you want to add something?
I think, there are two things that are important. You want to close the conversation because there's the logging that is happening behind the scenes. So if you're not closing the conversation, it could be that something went wrong and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Because all of the events that are happening with the API are also being logged behind the scenes. So it's interesting when you do debugging to figure out what happened. There's also another timeout that we didn't mention. It's a bit outside of your question, but it's also worth remembering. When you do a prompt, you have I think it's a 120-second timeout that can happen also.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Thanks.
What's the pricing model behind this? So I'm familiar with either the Copilot that comes with a $75 retail per user per month, or the service agent, which is $2 per conversation. In the example we saw, it started with a conversation. Does that mean every interaction, especially when we're talking about in high volume digital implementations?
So I'm so glad that you asked this question, and maybe I should have covered it in my presentation. So here is the amazing thing, or the important thing to note, is that with Agentforce, yes, the way we monetize Agentforce is there are essentially two billing metrics there. The conversation, as you mentioned, $2 per conversation, and then the Einstein request credits that are consumed behind the scene. With API, because we want APIs to be leveraged mostly in a headless manner, we don't charge for conversations. So for the APIs, the only thing that you pay for is the request credits about the LLM requests that you have consumed, in terms of which is what we measure in terms of the Einstein request credits.
So this is great, and I had asked explicitly this clarifying question with my account exit. Apparently documentation is not clear. So they got back to me saying that Einstein request plus the per conversation for ASA.
You are welcome to reach out to me. My name is Shipra Gupta. Yeah. So I'm the product management for this API, and please reach out to me if you can send me an email or a message or however, and I will get together with your account executive. Yes, it is very clear we are not charging you for conversations with the APIs.
This is great. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I had a question about the multi-agent system example that you had with the orchestrator agent. At what point, how would I know when it's time to break it out into multiple agents versus like that document verification agent, for example, sounds like to me would be like a topic, and then those skills would be actions inside of it. When do I know that I should create agents for those things?
Yeah, so I think that is a kind of a loaded question. There is no clear answer or formula as to how you choose to do your implementation. I would say that if there is a reason for some feature, some skill to be a standalone functionality. So for example, if you were to want to deploy your document verification as a standalone agent on some other surface in some other context, then maybe it makes sense for you to build that as an agent. On the other hand, if you're always just going to use it in the context of your loan origination system, then maybe you can just build it as a topic. So it really depends on your business case, your workflow, and the usages that you have in mind.
I'd say from a technical standpoint, you can also distribute the system. So maybe you don't own the entirety of the business. Maybe you're using subcontractors to do some of the agent work. So you could be calling other agents which are not part of your actual org. Maybe another Salesforce org, for example. So you can distribute the effort.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, if I want to build something where they call Apex, like a user clicks a button, and then Apex generates the requests that would normally be made. Mm-hmm. I saw some examples using Connect API. I heard you mention in the invocable actions. I wasn't clear how that would work. How would you go about that?
So I believe it's in pilot, right? The integration for
The custom actions are already generally available. The standard actions are currently in pilot. But yes, if you want to invoke an agent headlessly from your Apex, I think the best way to go about that is, for now, you can use the custom invocable actions. So if you go to the flow builder today, you will see, I think it's called AI agent action or something like that. Those are the three terms in whichever order. You will see those actions being present there in the flow builder, and that's how you can connect to an Agentforce agent. With the standard actions, we will expose API functions more granularly. So if you wanted more control over session creation, so like what Philip showed, you can create a session, you can send a request, you can get a response, and then you can end a session. We will have those be available as standard actions. So if you wanted more control on how you want to create the session, or what variables you might want to pass while creating while sending a request, etc., you could use the standard invocable actions as well there.
Thank you.
We are out of time. We'll take questions on the side so that the next speaker can settle in. but we're happy to help. Thank you so
Sure.
much,
Thank
everyone.
you very much.